All right, maybe we can go ahead and get started.
Great. I'll just do roll call. Click if that's okay then.
Mhm.
Councilmember Reed. Kimberly Walton. Lashandra Rayfield.
Present.
Katie McFadden.
Present.
Omar Salem. Darlene Cannon.
Present.
Jane Grover.
Present, thank you.
Carla Thomas.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Jane, thanks for calling in on your way, still heading home. So we can have the right numbers to
Yeah,
some
so
stuff done.
sorry. I'm on the train, Carla, and I'm really sorry, but I'm here.
It's all good. It's all good. We appreciate you being here so we can keep the meeting rolling forward. So, all right. So the first order of business today is looking at the minutes from March 31st. So if folks had a chance to review that, do you want me to give a few minutes now? I'll just give a few minutes.
Is it possible for someone's screen to be shared? My internet in my house, as I was just looking at it, everything cut out, and so I'm on my phone, so I can't see anything right now. So if anyone wouldn't mind sharing their screen with the minutes, I would appreciate it.
I'll share mine.
Thank you.
All right, it should be at the bottom. 1 second, I'm gonna get to the bottom. Oh, where are the minutes from last week? Sorry, minutes from the 31st.
Try to disconnect and connect. Okay. Thank you.
All right. So can I have, Matt, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, a motion to approve the minutes from March 31st? Anybody?
This is Jane. I'll move to approve the minutes of the meeting on March 31st.
And I say,
Second.
There we go. We got lots of seconds. All in favor? If we need that. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I'm gonna open up the floor for public comment. We have a few people present. Matt, not Matt Oren, but Matt Simmons, or Alderperson Kelly, or Trisha, or Jersey, or Carlos. Anybody here for public comment?
No, nothing from me.
Trisha.
Hi, Tricia Conley, Second Ward. I'm just here to support the anti or lessening gentrification proposal. And interestingly enough, this week, I actually got a call from someone who said they were calling on behalf of an investor about possibly my interest in selling my home, which was kind of shocking because we've only lived in the Second Ward since the end of September. And, you know, I don't know what this was. My partner tried to call back and got a voicemail, but we were going to try and play it out and see if we could learn more about who these people were, how they worked. But, you know, and so maybe it's about that. Maybe it's just somebody doing a scam trying to get information, but either way, it's not okay. And you know, people are vulnerable, and we need to have stronger ordinances to help people and help Evanstonians stay in Evanston. So thanks for your work around this.
Thank you. So for those who are sitting here a little confused and not sure what Tricia is talking about, Darlene brought forward some work that's being done presently in the Logan Square area to stem gentrification, and she had an opportunity to speak to all the person who is kind of leading that front and was going to introduce to us this week some possibilities, given that they're willing to share all the information so for us to discuss having something similar here, with the clear understanding that preventing these calls, you know, it doesn't in itself stem, but it's part of a bigger program, and that's part of what we'll be discussing today. So thank you, Tricia, for introducing that and like sharing your support on that issue. But we will get a chance to sort of discuss this as a group once we introduce it a little later on in the meeting and sort of give a little more detail. Carlos, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong.
Yeah, I'll wait until after the presentation if it's okay with you.
Okay, sure, no problem.
All right.
Anyone else here for public comment? Okay. Then let's get going with the next thing on our, so I'm trying to get up my, suddenly I have no, there we go. Okay, so the things on the item for discussion today. I wanted to kind of talk about the equity community survey plan. Everybody might have seen that the city sent out the survey they sent out a press release like on the 19th, and then the survey went out last Friday, if I'm not mistaken. So the survey is officially out there. As we discussed, we are not and cannot depend on emails from the city and the proportion of our population that sits on their emails all day and rely on responses from them only, that we're going to have to do significant community outreach. We now have, I sat and cleaned it up this week, we now have emails on all 70 of the 70 plus of the, I'm gonna pause for a second because I'm just getting started and I see a hand up and I'm wondering if that hand up is trying to get public comment.
Hello. Hi, this is Chris Kruger. I
Hi,
understand you're asking for comment on the on the ordinance proposed by Chicago Alderman Byron Cicho Lopez. Is that correct?
I mean, I wanna hold up just so that everybody
Okay.
is clear.
Just didn't
on, I
want to
mean,
miss it.
you can give comment, you can give actually comment on that. I want to make sure it's clear that we do not have an ordinance right here in this committee
Right.
or in Evanston on this.
Right.
Today, that was going to be introduced for discussion to put it before the commission to move forward with that. And so, I mean, I'm not trying to push back on it. I think it's a very good idea and an opportunity for us to get something that will come with, you know, sort of a template and a path to follow. I just don't want anybody to leave here thinking some ordinance is before some decision today, so that anybody has false hopes.
I misspoke. I misspoke.
All right.
So I'd just like to, my name is Christopher Kruger. I live at 2022 Dodge Avenue. I am an attorney licensed in the states of Wisconsin and Illinois. I'm a member of the Federal Trial Bar, and I practice civil rights and consumer rights law for the past 15 years. I support the Cicho Lopez proposal. I support the regulation of real estate sales. I like to point out that what's very different now is even just 5 years ago or 10 years ago is that up to 10% or even higher, up to 20% of the sales of residential homes is being carried out by large investment firms. So we have a Wall Street investment firms that are out there buying up these homes. And as a result, home ownership is going to fall, and the cost of home ownership is going to rise dramatically. So we need to do everything we can to preserve home ownership, and especially to preserve home ownership among vulnerable groups, like historically disadvantaged groups like women and communities of color. So I support Byron C. Joe Lopez support generally, and I urge the commission to study that proposal and emulate that proposal. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. And again, we will, I don't want to like let those comments like slide by thinking that we're ignoring them, but much of the board, the commission needs to kind of be caught up on what that is, since this is the first day it's being introduced. And so I want to make sure that I have a chance to do that. And then, and if those people who spoke on that want to kind of chime back in at that time, I will make space for that and welcome that. Okay, so back to the equity community survey. Thanks for your note there, Jane. Yes, that was published on the 19th, both with a press release and then going out in the newsletter, the city newsletter. Matt, do you have any numbers? When I spoke to you before, we were at like 165 or something like that. That was just from the press release. Do you have any updated numbers?
Yeah, so just an update on how many people have taken it. It's been about 300 people have participated.
Oh.
So while 300 sounds great for a few days, remember we're a town of 70,000 people. And part of the commitment we are making as an equity committee is to make sure that we are, I don't have any goals personally, not that I could set it, and we can come up with different goals if we want, but I don't have any goals so much around like we have to hit 20% or we have to hit a certain number. Because I honestly, to set a goal like that, I'd have to know what the normal response rates are for like sort of open season surveys like this in larger communities that are not within a business or not within an organization. And I've more done this in organizations, and so the rates are going to be different. But I am more interested in making sure that our response rate represents our population distribution in some pattern. It's not going to be pit for pat, but that we kind of see that representation happening. And so we are going to, there's a commitment to kind of keep this open. And I think, we were talking about this too close to last summer to make it happen. Things took a little longer, and we will be flowing into this summer. And so part of what we have a list of 70 places that we have an email going out to. I'm committing to get that out by tomorrow, of all the churches, all the senior groups, youth groups, places that work with homeless populations, nonprofits, and then just prominent people in some of our different racial communities, with an ask that they send this out to their, their network. The main reason I'm holding on that email now is because I want to find out what we as a committee are willing to offer, and committee/city. So Matt, this is partially you. Beyond asking these folks to either text their populations, because some places use text versus email their populations. But I also want to be able to ask that if they're having an event, if a church is having I have no idea what churches have, but like a summer bonanza for whatever reason. And they are going to have masses of their congregation, or, people who go to whatever that specific event is, if it's not religious. Do we have people who are willing to volunteer to show up? If we send out, hey, we have people we're requesting that people show up at this event, with, I think quarter sheets with the QR code would work to pass it out to folks to make sure that, to pass it out to folks at the event and tell them about the survey and ask them to fill out the survey. They can just scan it on their phone and fill out the survey that way. And is the city willing to provide like printed sheets to, so that we can get these out at different events? So those are sort of a two-pronged question. And then the third piece of that question was like, does anybody else have any ideas if there are events, how to get sort of a population out of the events?
I can answer the second part of the question. Is yes, we can do flyers and we can do QR code things to pass on.
Okay, so I can get those to you. Is anybody willing to like, and again, you don't have to like say on a specific date, but I didn't want to offer that we're willing to have people come circulate these flyers / QR codes / whatever without first speaking. I mean, we don't have a staff outside of this group. But if you are willing to be on the list of a group of people who you could spend an hour there, but if you show up at some of these summer events and pass out and try to talk to people about the survey to get them to, I feel that that's a very one person to person way to get it done. And two, this is an opportunity to capture target populations where, that we are interested in hearing from, because historically they are not represented in many of the surveys that the city did. This is an opportunity for us to sort of get out there and do some outreach to these populations. I think outreach is a better word than target, so I'm going to take target back.
Yeah, and I have a crew.
I like it when people have a crew. Put those kids to work.
I have a crew, so we yeah. There was a comment in the chat. Also, I'm not. Looks like Jane says count her in for outreach.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, I would definitely reach out to you. It wouldn't be just like, hey, by the way, you're assigned, you need to be here at this time and that, and you have to be there, but I'll reach out with, a couple of events that people are requesting, and, you will kind of let me know ones that work for your schedule.
I have a question around the same thing. I guess it's curious to know what's the, are there public places in Evanston where we're allowed to post? In addition to, I know that it's probably more effective to have people put it in their hands, but I was just wondering if there were places like that. And then I also wanted to know if we knew what the makeup of the 300 people were. They completed it already.
So I can't answer right now the question about where you all can post flyers, but I think that there are several places that would be willing to post flyers. We can look more into that. And then as far as the makeup of the 300 people, I can look into that more, but I think it's mostly the people who the commission has anticipated would be responding to emails from the city. So more outreach, as Chair Thomas is necessary to reach different populations.
I'm so sorry, I missed the second part of that. I don't know if your volume's down or if it's my phone. I'm sorry. I missed the second part.
It could be me. I was just saying that the population that has responded, I don't have the data in front of me now, but I have looked at it, and it's pretty consistent with what the commission has previously sort of assumed that the city, communication from the city would get. So as Chair Thomas is saying, more outreach would be necessary.
I did not see or hear the numbers at the 300 point, but I did chat with Matt when it was at the 160 something point, and I'll just racialize and put an age to what he's saying. Older white women are the ones who had been doing the majority of responses at that time. So we expect that, and we expect that that's what's going to come through the channel of emails. So I think that's why we're putting the effort forward for other other places, but, and so I like the question that you asked, Lashonda, because what it's gonna force me to do now is add, and I'm gonna put a note to myself. I don't have the park districts on there. And so I'm going to add to our now 89 person list, the park districts. Because I had included places like the Levy Center, like more focused on seniors. And then we had included the Foster Center, again, focused on trying to make sure we have outreach to youth / Black and Brown population, as well as the seniors in there. But I mean, ultimately, we should have this posted in all the park districts, which is city, city property, and we should get permission to, easy permission to do that there. And then I was going to add the library and making sure that we have those in all the libraries. I personally love to put one on each one of those BS no asking for money signs that the city has recently put up. So, but that's just being petty. But, from an equity lens, that crap needs to be covered up with something worthwhile. I see the high school student organized an anti-racism group could help distribute to students. Is that SOAR? Yeah, so CAO, yes,
Yep.
that is the acronym. Okay, so I will add that to the list.
What's the age range?
We are looking for youth. I mean, I don't suspect that like elementary school kids would be filling it out, right? Like, but I mean, I think high school,
Like freshmen
is fine.
to 1,000. Okay, yeah.
Is anyone aware of any other social media platforms that are used by any particular set of groups throughout Evanston? And so Matt, actually to that point, can we at least get the city to post it on their social media platforms?
Yeah, I'll need to talk to the communication teams, but I think that
Yeah, that should be easy enough, but that may go to a different subset of the same group.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna, I had Lysandra, I have Jane, and I'm just gonna tell everybody else that when we have events, I'm gonna send out to the full population, hoping that we get some other volunteers who are willing to go out, and maybe we could pair you with an event you might have gone out to in the first place. If there's anything that comes up impromptu over the summer, please reach out to myself or Lashondra and say, hey, I happen to hear about this event. This might be a good place, and we'll try to figure out how to get volunteers there to pass out the flyers and the QR codes. Okay, so that's and in addition to the email that will go out to all these people on this list, you guys will also be on that list that goes out. The email that goes out is asking everybody on this list, which will now include you, to pass it on to your network. So it does not matter for this commission personally, whether your network is a mix of all sorts of different people. We kind of created that form so we can make sure we capture all the groups that we would like to hear from, but whoever's in your network, all the studies show that if there's a personal ask, so you're stating that you're on the Equity Commission, you are part of the group that has created the first Evanston Equity, you would really appreciate it if your network, if the ask comes from a personal place, as opposed to like Joe the mayor, Dan the mayor, that it has a much better chance of having that ask met. So you will be included in that ask to send it to folks in your network who either live or work in Evanston. So that is all I have on this item. Look out for that email tomorrow, Saturday at the latest, because shit happens. Any other question on that topic before we move on? All right, so I'm going to give a quick introduction to the gentrification piece that has that you've heard a couple of people speak two, and then I'm sharing something in the chat now. So you can kind of pop that open. Oopsie daisy. Why did that come out as a map? To anybody else, or does that come? Oh, there we go. We got a report. There we go. Could you? That might be the wrong thing. I thought I put the. Darlene, help me out here. I thought I put the link that you just sent.
Yeah, I'm trying to click on it now. Let me see. Hold on.
If you can point us to the right place in that list of things.
Okay, so the first page should be, that should be it. This is what it looks like.
Yeah, it's not coming up that way for me. Let me see.
Because it's 3 pages.
Oh, it downloads. You know what? Never mind. I'm an idiot. It downloaded a file and I wasn't paying attention. So I kept looking at the web page that was coming up first and seeing fellowships that I need to be working on. Okay, so I'm going to kind of give a brief introduction. I'm going to let Darlene speak to this a bit. And so this is a little bit putting the cart before the horse, but we had an opportunity to, because we had an older person from Chicago who was willing to share some information from us. And so like, it's an opportunity to begin the discussion. Nothing's getting, it's part of me kind of pumping the brakes a little earlier just to make sure we're clear about the language here. This is the first time we're even discussing this. And it's because, an opportunity was sort of made open to us. So I don't know if anybody else have heard it, but I personally have heard it. And then we had somebody relay a personal story here, even though it was about the second ward and not the fifth ward. But even since the fifth ward school has passed, which is probably, 5 weeks ago at this point, the number of calls that have upticked in the fifth ward of people anticipating values going up, and so trying to jump on the wagon of buying cheap now before the school is built to develop has upticked. And if you know folks who live in the fifth ward, it's not like it's a new phenomenon. It has always happened, but it definitely has taken an uptick since then. We are also in, I'll put my slight real estate hat on here for a second. We're in an environment where inventory is extremely, extremely low. And so people are, like sitting there staring at the Zillow or the multiple listing service and realizing that nothing's coming on. So, to be fair, most people, not to be fair, but like most people don't even recognize it as a predatory act. They think they're being proactive because, we train people to be go-getters. We train people to find a way by any way, and they see it as being proactive. They do not see the predatory element to it. They start contacting people. In fact, I had a person this week tell me that's how they got their new place that they're now fully gutting and rehabbing. And so the piece that people were mentioning is a piece of a larger initiative within this particular Chicago neighborhood to try to stem gentrification. This ordinance, in short, puts some regulation around people sort of aggressively contacting folks, trying to buy their property. That alone is not going to stem gentrification. It needs to be part of a larger plan. And one of the things, and I'll have Darlene speak some more here, but one of the things we're hoping to do is try to have the older person who was responsible for leading this kind of come in and give us some ideas of the larger plan. I would feel positive about rolling something like this out if we could say that it was step one of like larger goals, because this alone does not fix a problem, but I think it can at least stem the harassment, and at least the reality is when you may be sitting thinking, if you haven't like thought about this idea before, well, what's the big deal? If somebody wants to pay money for it and somebody wants to sell, why not? The reality is most individuals who have owned for like 30 years, who are just starting to think about it, have no idea what's going on in the market at any given moment. And so what may seem like a good number for them because they refinanced 3 years ago or refinanced 4 years ago, isn't what their actual true value is right now. And it's predatory because often the folks who are calling have exact knowledge of the market, and they have an opportunity to sort of pull one over on the folks who are selling. And so at least being able to stop that predatory type behavior is one way of trying to not have all the profit land in the pockets of developers. So Darlene, that's kind of how I would introduce it. If you'd like to speak some more from your interactions.
Yes, thank you. So Byron Cinco Lopez, he's from Pilsen, the 25th Ward. And, he passed this ordinance, and the ordinance, it covers the entire city of Chicago when they adopted it. And, I think that one of the things, that, tonight, we.
Becky,
Hello? Okay. Tonight, we talk about measures that we can, hopefully do as a commission to hopefully prevent the displacement of working class and low income families in Evanston, and prevent, predatory developer tactics. The ordinance, that presented is, was inspired by Byron Cinco Lopez. And it's just one of a series of ordinances that he is working on. In Chicago, and in particular Pilsen, to prevent the continued gentrification and placement of people of color. And, just, some little data is that, in 2016, UIC did a study, and it showed that more than 10,000 Hispanics have left Pilsen since 2000. That's 26% of their population. To me, that's large. And I think like some of the things that I gathered from the ordinance is that it blocks real estate developers from using predatory tactics to persuade or convince or pressure or force or harass other coherents, any homeowner to sell their property. The measure, which passed by the city's Council of Housing and Real Estate, it took effect immediately. Under the ordinance, developers and realtors, investors are not allowed to contact a property owner by email, phone, or in person, or written letter within a 180-day period after a homeowner said they are not interested in selling. Those violating the rule would face a fine ranging from $2,000 to $10,000. And with talking with Byron today, some things he said that he knows now that he wish he was known, in the beginning, about strengthening it, is that, the complaints about the harassment goes through 311, but, I guess there's trying to get an understanding of who is going to follow through and investigate. And I think predatory tactics needs to be clearly defined. And one thing that, he said also is that reoccurring offenses, that they should lose their license. And, that I need to try to understand, does that mean like their license, like in Illinois, in the whole USA or whatever? And we have to, there's been a lot of reports in Chicago about inspectors colluding with developers If developer like targets a particular home and then inspectors targeting them by continuously finding them, so then like the homeowner is kind of backed up into a wall, you know. And yeah, you guys have the ordinance, and you know what I'd like to see us, you know, maybe I'd be willing to, you know, work on it to specify it for Evanston, and then, you know, we can visit it again, and then, you know, Carla, we can talk about next steps.
And
Mhm.
I would say, you know, again, one of the key things to me is to see that this be one spoke in a wheel that's
Right.
focused on sort of safeguarding affordable homes and keeping affordable homes for folks of color and for working class folks in Evanston. And this is, you know, like, this is not something that's going to happen quietly. It is not happening quietly across all of the US right now. There was a point that Carlos made earlier that I want to put a fine point on it, because, and I say this, like I want to make sure I disclose to everybody, I am a real estate broker. I am a real estate investor. Like, this is what I've done for years. I've had to take a look at my own practices in the past, or what I have thought it was okay in the past, and sort of do my own little come to Jesus on that. And so I say this, but this morning on CNN, and then I saw another clip of it somewhere, rent across the nation is up by, in like Tampa, they give the example, by 58%. Imagine getting a letter that your rent has more, you know, gone up by 60%. And that's the highest in the nation, but many, especially in the southern areas, many of the towns, it has gone up by 20, 40%. And then just this afternoon, I saw another screenshot from a TV screen. I can't remember which somebody screenshotted and shared it, that in New York, it's happening. The price of a 1-bedroom is now above 4,000, above 6,000, some neighborhoods, with increases in 111%, 89% in one, and 67% or 69% in the other, the exact number. So if you own your home, you might be sitting here not knowing what is going on in the country and across the country. And these hikes in rent are driven by the fact that more and more corporations and in equity firms are buying up, large scale buying up houses. I have seen it. I've walked through these houses myself. Little dinky houses. When I say, I'm not trying to like berate anybody's home, but for the price that they're trying to charge in Skokie, they're trying to charge $4,000 for a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath home with obvious water damage in the basement, and no washer dryer even. They are buying up these homes. They are managing them from websites with large management companies, and they are like hiking up the price way more than a standard, like a landlord who owns 1 or 2 properties would do. And the fact that this is happening en masse is allowing them to sort of like just raise, they target certain neighborhoods and raise the price in certain neighborhoods. And so these sort of what many might feel like it's over control of government is starting to become way, and Jane, I see your hands, I'll get to it in a second, way, I have like blinked at some news feeds I've seen recently where communities Atlanta is looking at cutting down, putting an Airbnb. That's another thing that's happening. As somebody who also does Airbnb, but like large corporations are buying multiple hundreds of Airbnbs in a community. And so that there's way less homes available. So we're not talking about an individual doing this. We're talking about large corporations doing it by the hundreds and 50s. And then that is leaving way less homes. They're hiking up the price. They always pay cash for it. And then they're being used as Airbnb. Atlanta is looking at limiting the number of ownership of Airbnbs to 2 in the city. You can't own one in Atlanta unless you live there. So again, that cuts out the, the guy with the cash somewhere in China doing this. And not only, I'm not blaming China. China is not the problem for our housing, but like, just from a distant place. Other communities are also now cutting down on sort of the number of properties that can be owned, which actually exist in other countries as well. So while this seems like coming into territory that seems very relatively controlling to way, I don't know, a liberal, and not liberal as in liberal versus conservative, but liberal as in the way our government is structured, would normally have their level of government. This has actually been happening in town after town because of the different, and I think the important word here is predatory type and aggressive type industrialization of housing is happening across the country. So Jane, go ahead.
Thanks, Carla. I think I saw very recently, might have been a 60 Minutes story even about these corporations that are buying up the mid-level and early kind of first home buyers kind of level housing and putting them out of reach for both renters and those buyers. And so I want to pick up what something that Darlene said early, and that was about needing data for this. First, I thought that this would be getting at specific geographies in Evanston, but it sounds as if it's going to be citywide. So this is getting to the behavior of the actions of prospective property purchasers, not to focusing on certain communities and neighborhoods within Evanston. So it's a citywide thing, not a focusing on geography. Because I was thinking first that it might be interesting to see if we can even map out, are there areas in Evanston that are vulnerable to gentrification? But that wouldn't be the target, because the target here is going to be the behavior and activities of these predatory purchasers. Yeah.
I think you were on the right track originally. Nobody's targeting the dude with a $1.6 million house on the lake to gentrify his ass. Like, right? Like, it just isn't happening, right? Yeah. There's literally, and to the point of the phone numbers, and like, I think Darlene, you said taking away licenses. You think these corporate dudes are the ones doing it? They literally pay these guys they call bird dogs. Mm-hmm. And the bird dogs drive around the neighborhoods and look for the houses that are in disrepair per their eyes. And they try to contact, and when they have, then they call that guy with the money. So like the guy with the license and with the money and will never be, found, because, he would say he didn't tell him to knock on that door. He didn't tell him to approach, but these bird dogs drive around and they look for homes and they target the homes that are older and in need of repair. And we know that there is a correlation. So I think, we definitely know the part that this is going to happen.
So because I had to obviously rejoin this meeting on a different device, I've lost the chat with the link to the ordinance. I'm really sorry. If you don't mind reposting. Does the Chicago ordinance refer specifically to gentrification, or is it really about the predatory nature of thank you, Carla, of this activity? Is it really about preserving affordable housing? Let me take a look. Thanks.
Right. I think a couple of things. I mean, it would be citywide, but like Carla said, the areas that are most impacted are 2, 5, and 8. I grew up here, and when I grew up here, the population of Black people was 26%. Now we're down to 11%, and so I think that, if we could put some sort of measure in there to, help families, because, we're not, we as a city, we do a lot of talk about equity and inclusion and affordable housing and everything like that. But yet the numbers are declining, and the numbers are declining because of the lack of affordability. There's the harassment that happens to people. And those things are not being addressed while, we're still saying that we're an equitable city. So I think that, if we put some measures in place to, kind of have for residents who might be at the point where, they're being harassed, they're older, and I don't know if, anyone is colluding with them or not to, kind of target them. But, is this something like this would, it'd be another level of, another layer of protection for residents so that, they can stay here. Whole neighborhoods and communities, and whole neighborhoods in Evanston, which used to be predominantly Black, are no longer predominantly Black. We can go into Fifth Ward. We can talk about Wesley. We can talk about Jackson. We can talk about Darrow. We can talk about Hoveland. I mean, all of those areas where Black families grew up, generations of families grew up, are, now replaced with white families. And, everyone, obviously deserves, adequate housing. But the thing is that once those families are pushed out, they can't afford to come back to Evanston. Housing is expensive here now. So, if this is a measure, something we could kind of work on, it'd be something,
I think there would be other residents too who are vulnerable to the same kind of predatory activity, who don't necessarily live in a neighborhood that is vulnerable to gentrification, but would also still benefit from an ordinance like this.
Yeah, that's why we
The vulnerable elderly and
I agree.
yeah.
And so I think we will continue to kind of, I mean, one of the beauties of this ordinance is, I mean, again, in all strategy, right? You have to try to get some quick wins, even though they may not be the most impactful thing or the thing that's going to stop while we work on the stuff that is literally going to take much longer to get in place as well, even though they have a higher impact, right? So we have to work with ends. Seeing this in effect, having the ability to talk to the people who push this through in Chicago and understand the pitfalls, understand what they would improve if they can go back and do it, could allow us to kind of move something of this type along in a swifter manner. As I'm going to, at the risk of repeating myself again, I want this to be part of a larger package, because this alone is, while the right thing to do, this is not stopping anything, right? Like, so now the developer buys the bird dog burner phones and he burns the phone every month, and now we have no idea who called or no way of tracking, like who's the person who was targeting, right? And so there are things that are in place right now in Evanston that were originally put towards some of this purpose, but also some of just kind of keeping the image or the historic nature of Evanston. Presently, we have something in place that if you were going to knock down a house, there's a $10,000 fee, not fine per se, not for the actual demolition, just for the pleasure of knocking down a house. This is to dissuade people from knocking down a house. When that was put in place, $10,000 might have been something, but now that developers can, buy a place for $300,000 and then turn around and build a house on it and sell it for 1.2 million, like $10,000 is not a deterrent anymore. So sort of revisiting that. Some of the things on the list here are, and we've actually talked about this as a commission before, putting some sort of deterrent in the same way around deterrent or stop, around changing 2 flats into single family homes. Because what that does, and again, full disclosure, I live in a 2-flat I live in a property that I changed into a single family home. So it doesn't, like recognizing these things now doesn't mean I can go back 10 years from now, undo what I did, but recognizing now that like in my community, you can't, like finding affordable rental is one thing. Being a rental family in this Dewey Second Ward area is hard. There just aren't any rentals because so many of them have been converted. So whether it's putting a ban on future ones, incentivizing people who have done it to maybe turn their basements or something into additional unit to try to like repair some of the damage that we, and I will say we there have collectively created. What I want this to be is like a kickoff of, we have spoken as a commission before that affordable housing is likely to be, again, we're not predicting, we're not telling the survey what to say, but we anticipate that affordable housing is going to be one of the things on this survey. We predicted that before the housing crisis that we are collectively now in. Like, the US is in a housing crisis, both on the rental and the purchase side. I mean, not for the very rich, but for the rest of us, the US is in a housing crisis. So this is before that. I want us to start bringing things to the table, like Darlene has done here, for us to discuss. Doesn't mean everyone gets passed, doesn't mean everyone gets, but what we want to do is put together something comprehensive that is attacking this problem from multiple angles, because one thing is not going to. So if you work in other communities, if you hear something, like in the last month in particular, particularly targeting investors, I have heard a lot in the news, and I belong to lots of real estate groups because I own a company doing that. It's just bubbling up a lot that is there's policy being put in place to stem this. If you hear of something, if you see something, you have access to somebody who's worked on it in a different community, it doesn't have to be in Chicago, please sort of bring that to the group so we could start looking at all the pieces that could sort of help make up a more comprehensive push on this issue.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to say is that Byron is willing to come to our next meeting and, talk to us, answer any questions that we might have, and tell about, the ordinance and how, it's been successful in helping, in particular in his ward, but I'm sure he has data on, the city as how it's been helpful too. So that's, something to think about as, we move forward.
Anybody else has anything to share on this topic before we move on? And I think, Darlene, I think, as I mentioned to you before, I think we'd be interested in having him chat for this. This particular ordinance is very short. Like, reading it, we can pretty much summarize. My bigger interest would be like trying to understand how this fits into the larger plan, which I know they have a larger plan around affordable housing and gentrification. So I'll make some time for him. All right, anybody else wants to mention anything on this issue before we move forward? Anybody who commented before would like to add something? Hi, Jersey.
Hey, I just want to thank you all and thank Darlene for bringing this to the city as a potential ordinance. I just hope that the committee moves forward to consider something like this without waiting on a more conclusive or larger package. I think it's important to agree on something and then present it to the city as soon as possible, as opposed to waiting on additional ordinances or thinking about what a larger anti-gentrification package might look like. So I just urge the committee to consider that.
Duly noted. And I want to make sure that I restate or clarify. I mean, there is the point there about quick wins versus longer stuff. I don't want to hold up the quick wins, waiting until, the triple layer cake is ready to be baked, right? But what I do want to be able to state as we introduce, the quick win is that there is a larger plan. And so the plan doesn't have to be fully baked, but this is part of a 3-step plan, or this is part of a 4-step plan, because, it needs to sit. I feel like something like this needs to sit in a larger scheme of things. So we won't wait for the whole thing to be ready. But I'd like to have a vision of where we're going with this, so that we can sort of situate it as we present it. But thank you for that. All right, I am realizing that the version of going on to the next, if nobody else has anything else, I'm somehow doing the wrong thing here. The version of the PDF that I sent flipped pages, the page with the actual scorecards, so pieces of it are cut off. So I'm going to see if I can send like my document from my computer here. Give me 1 second and we will start talking about the scorecard, and there will be homework from the scorecard. There we go. Sorry, let me just try to. So it is in your packet. You could start like reviewing what's there. It's just that some of the pages are.
Did anyone else have difficulty with the link in the package, or was it just my horrible Wi-Fi today?
It was your Wi-Fi. Mine came through.
Okay, okay, just checking.
So there is a document that I just sent. It is the same thing as what you have. It's just that now you won't see. Oh, I thought it was cut off. It's not cut off. It's fine. I just couldn't see my screen. I am not functioning on all cylinders today. All right, so never mind. You can use the one you had before or mine. All right, so Darlene, LaShonda, and I have been meeting to discuss this. And we had a little bit of a come to Jesus on this. I mean, there are two ways to build anything. Build it comprehensive so that it's specific no matter what type of project plan you try to run through it. Or build it general. Sorry, let's just say in that first one where you build it very robust, so there are like 10 different avenues you can choose depending on what type of project, what size of project, you know, like who's involved, all these different things. And that makes it so that once a group or project gets in its lane, the questions in that realm of that lane of the scorecard are targeted towards them, if that makes sense. So that somebody coming with a finance budget type project versus somebody coming with a housing project are getting vastly different questions that are targeted to their type. And so that's the road we started going down. That is a slightly better road to dummy proof it, because then people can't dance around the questions you're asking, because the questions are quite targeted to the exact thing that they're doing. But we sat back and took a look at who we are, where we are, what's going on in the city of Evanston right now. The fact that we are already creating this in a backseat position, or the middle seat of the minivan, maybe. I don't know how to put it, where these scorecards should be utilized by the departments of the institution, in this case, the city of Evanston, that is doing the work, that is baking the cake, that is creating the project, that is pushing forward the initiative, so that every step of forming the initiative, they are, you know, they're contemplating these questions. We don't have the power to do that, and nobody at the city has been trained in the basics, far less to this point. So we have decided to work with what we have and create one where we, as the equity committee, is then scoring it, hopefully before it's fully baked, but knowing that we're not in on the ground floor. And so given that at this point, in this pilot moment, in this beginning, we don't want it always to be like this. This is not how these are built to be used. The people doing the work is a smaller group, us, meaning answering the questions. And so from that perspective, if we assume that it's a smaller group to train, us, then us, or the future us is right, like who sit in this chair, but a group of less than 10 people, we don't have to worry so much about people purposefully avoiding the questions, right? I mean, like this is a self-test. And if you want to get your project to the next step, the incentive is to like self-test yourself well, right? Like BS, fluff, you know, add more. But in this case, the way we are rolling it out, it's not a self-test. It's an EEC doing an evaluation of a partially baked project or initiative or practice put forward by the city. And so we worried that making it more complicated, the way that would make for more robust card, while it has its benefits, really wouldn't lift off in an organization that is presently, floundering in the kindest words, right? And so we decided to step back and simplify. And so what you see is what we're hoping to be, 85%, maybe 90% of the first draft of what this document will be. We have, so let me just get to the table of, we forget the table of content, we'll go through the projects. So, what is the scorecard, explaining what the scorecard is and explaining how, when do you give something a 0, when do you give something a 1, when do you give something a 3, 5, whatever. On the next page, we talk about what types of projects will go into the equity scorecard, as well as when do you use it. This when do you use it, I feel like, especially since we're piloting and this organization will be making a decision of when they, this commission will be making a decision of when and what we choose. That list of when we use the scorecard will likely grow. For now, I'm looking at the bottom of page 4, the second half. So far, we've come up with the EEC anticipates a disproportionate effect to communities of color, and that should not be a question mark. The project includes housing development over 30 units. So we are concerned that the community is getting new housing and wanting to make sure we secure affordable housing in some way. The right number may or may not be 30 moving forward as we see things come before us. We have received a request, and again, we are called the Equity and Empowerment Commission. And so we are supposed to be somehow responsible for outreach and engaging the public, et cetera. And so there's no way that this path to evaluating a project can exist without an opportunity for the the residents, to have input in some way as to what needs to be reviewed. So if the residents have a concern and we get over, I don't know that 15 residents is the right number. Again, we're starting somewhere. Jane, what are you saying? Should be lower? Yeah, okay, so that number should be low.
We talk about in constituent services, is if you hear from 5 residents, that's enough to, prod you to action on an issue, on a major issue. So 15 is a lot.
And so maybe
that requires some organization. It shouldn't require like a petition drive to make it happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so we may decide whether at 5, it comes before us to make sure it meets the other criteria. Because I mean, like leaf blowers just keep coming to mind. You can get 50 goddamn calls about leaf blowers, but that's not the city's biggest problem, right? Like, so I'm trying to balance that. As well. And so maybe, I mean, not that leaf blowers is an equity issue, although I wouldn't put it past somebody to try to frame it that way. But like, there are times when we can get calls on something because people are annoyed by it, but it is still not the right thing for us to utilize our time on based on the actual effect, impact. So maybe it is 5 and that gets changed to 5. But the next step there is that we then evaluate across the other criteria to make sure. Because even though we put criteria somewhere, people are going to get angry or interested or right. And again, anger is never a bad thing. It was never just a bad thing for me. So I'm not putting that in a bad light, but people are motivated to speak up on something. And they do, but it may not meet all our other criteria. They miss that. And then there's a request coming directly from the city or the city council, which is really, to me, when we know we're making a difference. Right now, we are putting something forward and hoping they pick it up. When they start requesting that we score them, then that's a signal to me that they're ready to hear the consequences. They're ready to start like taking a deep look at themselves and the work that is being done in whatever departments. And so to me, that number 4 is like, goal for the pilot. And then the real goal is to get them to do it themselves. I'm not going to go through the steps so much. The steps are just outlining what comes next. So the first page, so one of the first steps is that 2 people from the EEC are assigned to this project. And again, the number 2 is so that we could have, at least some perspectives. We're not supposed to meet more than 3, but the hope is here that nobody is overburdened, too many times in a given year to do this outside work. This is just gathering information. What's the name of the project? Who are the key people on the project? What's the contact information? What does the project look like? So this is just kind of gathering it, like letting us know what the project's about. And then it is responsibility of, I've moved to page 9. The formatting on this shifted again. I don't know why. So we have those blank pages. It is responsibility for those 2 members of the EEC to speak on the phone with, talk with both the people that this affects, as well as the person in charge of the project or the initiative or the practice at the city to answer these questions. So now we will have just one scorecard, regardless of what type. We understand that this, as a draft, is where we're going to start. I think if we get to a point where we do get the city to start scoring themselves, and I say the city now instead of the council, because the council will still have a gazillion different, rather than us even sitting here and thinking, wow, if a project was going through the zoning board, what kind of questions did they have? Like, if we get to the point where the zoning board is ready to score themselves and score every project that comes their way, or the finance committee or whatever it is, then they have the better, like they're going to know the questions they should be asking, right? More than us, who, like, finance is not necessarily my thing. So in this, there are 8 questions going down the left-hand side. You will, essentially these, you'll see that a piece is bolded. The bolded piece is sort of the added on piece, right? So in this first one, 0 to 1, and the question here is, were stakeholders engaged? And so if you get a 0 to 1, if the stakeholders from different racial groups, especially ones that are adversely affected, were informed of this proposal. You let them know you had a meeting, you let them know this is coming. You get a 2 to 3 if they were formed but meaningfully involved in the development of the proposal. And then you get a 4 to 5 if they were meaningfully involved, but there was authentic representation within the development of the program. And there's supposed to be a piece in there about, like, changes were made to lessen the impact. So each one of these is sort of growing on it. And so from what you find out from both the stakeholders and the group pushing forward the initiative or working on the initiative, you're supposed to not only give it a score on there, but sort of fill out, like, these, the instructions here in 0 to 1, 2 to 3, essentially won't remain there. You will write a little note that says, I spoke to many of the folks in the 5th Ward, multiple meetings were had. They felt that they were given a chance to hear what was happening, but they didn't feel like they had a voice or were listened to so, like, kind of explaining why you're scoring it in that 2 to 3 range versus another range. This is essentially, there are 8 questions in there, and then there's a last page where we are making recommendations for changing the actual proposal itself, but then recommendations to the city around the ordinance of the rules. There are often times where something's not equitable, but it's legal. It's not oftentimes, it's America, right? It's not equitable, but it's legal. So if something is happening, if a development is coming through and they put 3 studios in their affordable housing and they're like, look, we met the requirement. Technically they met the law, right? We may not be able to push back. The zoning board or whatever may not be able to shoot this down because it met the requirement. But then there's a recommendation that something should be done about the loopholes that are letting these things go through. So there's recommendation to the project itself and the people running the project or the initiative or the policy or whatever it is. And then there's recommendations to, the folks who control the loopholes, which may just be a different department of the city. I'm going to open it up for questions and comments, but say to you that, like, this is a lot to just, people haven't read all the things. My goal with this next week, not next week, next time we meet, is to bring a policy, a practice, or something to the table, and analyze this as a group. We got to use it to break it, right? This is not going to be perfect. And so if we take either a policy that was a big ticket item or a big, like, resident uproar item, or we take a future one that's coming down the table, we may not have all the facts from, the point, but like it's the discussion and the type of thinking and the analysis that's going on, or the type of questions we would want to ask the older person who led this, if that person were in the room. That is what we're trying to kind of take through. And I promise, I've done this not only with this form, but like with several other things. We got to put something through the system to figure out where the system breaks down. And so open to ideas, not only now, or later on what we will run through here, but also just opening up the table now to questions, comments, suggestions, things like that.
I was looking at, after our last meeting to work on it, I started playing around with, because we had talked about
Different format.
Yeah, different format and just kind of usability. So I started playing around with a different format for us to be able to kind of do more of a clicking type of, process to it. And so I can share that with you guys, but I did kind of, I don't know if it's one page because it's on a sheet. I don't know how many pages it ends up. It would be more than, it would still have the same elements as far as explanation, what have you, but just something that we could, I guess it would, if ideally we had 5 things that we had to review, it would hopefully speed up the process. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that to the table just to let you know that I can share, I don't have to share that here in this meeting, but I can share that with, unless that's the case, but I can share that with you so we can look at it before our next meeting.
Yeah, and just to kind of clarify that a little bit, on pages, say, page 13 of the document itself, page 9 at the very top of the actual scorecards. What we would love is that, like, in each of those boxes, the box is clear, so you can type in there, but when you hover over it, it tells you if the stakeholders were contacted, and the policy shared with them, then you would give it as this. And then you hover over the other one, and so it's giving you guidance when you hover over it, but the field is clear for you to then type in what you learned. And so we're trying to figure out how to make this a little more user friendly, because right now this text in the box, which again, this is us just trying to come up with the content, right? This text in the box, how do you know you're supposed to type in the box as well? So we're working on that from a usability standpoint.
Sorry, I thought I heard gunshots. So yeah, I'm close to Howard now, and my kid is.
You pause anytime you think your safety is in.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. But yeah.
Any questions, comments? All right, so Jean, go ahead.
I really like your idea, Carla, of stress testing this, using a policy, and I don't know if it makes sense to do one that's already happening, like the beach token policy or something simple, just to kind of put it through the ringer, or something more complicated. I can see that if we're going to be using the scorecard for things that are more complicated, like a zoning ordinance update, that gets really technical and would be more involved and requires some more time for whoever is going to be doing the evaluation for the scorecard.
Yeah, I mean, I would put that zoning ordinance update in the same bucket. We kind of put the budget. Unless you are able to do the financial nitty-gritty, unless you understand zoning and how that would affect, I don't know that we can expect this committee as a whole, not saying anybody here is not smart or knowledgeable or anything like that, but like, those things require certain set of skill sets that, you know, the average person on the street may be able to do open heart surgery, but they can't, you know, like that. They don't know anything about that, right? Like, so not that the average person.
But it gets to your evolution of this, which would be
Yeah.
that the city itself picks it up, that those experts who
Get a version
understand,
that meets-
understand the scorecard, yeah.
So so I don't know that we, you know, in our first piloting of this, not the first one, but as we pilot and roll this out, I don't know we're going to be able to take on the complicated things like a whole zoning rehaul. But I don't know, is the beach token too, I've been trying to think too, because I thought about the beach token. It seems harmless enough. It's passed in a positive way. So people have probably, you know, and there's not too much animosity around that for us to discuss it. And I thought, well, it might be too easy. I don't want to do something too complicated. I don't know, I couldn't think of anything else.
Well, Matthew might have some ideas too, of things that are maybe brewing that aren't huge policy undertakings or big changes to legislation, but would still be.
Yeah. So we can
helpful here.
brainstorm around this
Yeah.
before we meet next time. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I'll give it some thought.
All right. So coming into next meeting, I'm asking people to, you know, anything around affordable housing. Like at this point, we're just trying to, you know, we will keep working with the information we have from Darlene and the connection we to that person. But it doesn't mean that everything else will be, but I'd like us to just look at, we expect affordable housing to come up on that survey. We know that there's even bigger of a crisis than, you know, a year ago when we started talking about this. Let's not wait for people to tell us the problem. Let's start looking at the range of solutions. We're not reinventing the wheel. None of us are affordable housing geniuses. Like, let's see what the people who know what they're doing are doing in different communities. And let's see if we could bring that to the table. So by the time we get back the survey information, by the time we're kind of already, you know, starting to figure out what could work for Evanston and what is, you know, not ideal for here and what fits together, et cetera. Which doesn't mean slowing down the first thing that has been brought to us, but especially since it's, you know, hopefully a quicker win. Katie, I wanted to mention, I was hoping that Devon was here because I recognized that I did not pull together a meeting with him and you to talk about the ordinance that would go along with the scorecard, to sort of kind of force the hand of use on that. And so that is just going to have to be my homework again this month to kind of pull that together.
Sounds good. Yeah, happy to be helpful.
And
All right, anything else? Yep.
I just want to say, yeah, I think that, you know, when we get the survey data back, it will, you know, all roads will lead back to our housing crisis. And I think that, you know, one of the biggest things when I, you know, was really studying housing during the campaign and, you know, just looking at it right now is one of the biggest things is our IHO, our inclusionary housing ordinance. It's actually discriminatory against people who are on Section A or TBRA, any program in which people are at 30% AMI and 30% AMI area medium income. Right now, we start off at 50%. And so, you know, by cutting off 30%, we cut out a lot of people. And other communities, like, for example, Northbrook has a stronger IHO than we do. And, but I mean, we don't hear them priding themselves about being, you know, diverse and equitable and everything like that, but they have a better IHO than we do. Just saying, that's all.
That's another good one to bring to the table. So yeah, those are the things I think we need to create a home for and start compiling, because again, these aren't things we're going to start working on immediately. Our goals are to, you know, make sure we're getting the right kind of not compliance. Why am I using words like compliance? But the like kind of turnout in response to the survey from our population and get this scorecard lifted and in place, because before we know it, even when we started building this thing, the whole TIF thing came down and, we felt like we wanted to use it. And, it just wasn't a place we could. So I'd like to get this wrapped up. So even again, especially if we keep calling it pilot, if we realize that even if we have our first real project, not the demo kind of thing next week or next month, but if we have our first few real projects going through it, we will be open to tweaking and changing it, right? Like it has to work for us. We don't have to set it in stone. And so I want to make sure it's in a usable space. So as issues come up, we can actually start employing it.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else from anyone else?
Did you want me to invite Byron to the next meeting?
Yes. And so Matt, that would be something coming up on the agenda, as well as doing the mock, I don't know what to call it, but the mock use of this form. Look at me ending a meeting close to on time. That's a special kind of skill I don't normally have. All right. Thank you for showing up, everybody. Jane, thanks for making the extra effort to call in while still making your way home.
Apologies
I
for
wanna
my
make a
tardiness.
motion. Oh,
Yeah, no, it's all good. You were here, so that counted.
so I make a motion to adjourn. Is that how we do it?
Ask Matt.
So yeah, there you go. So I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
All right.
Anyone want a second?
I'll second it.
All right.
All right.
Thanks,
Have a good
Lashonda.
month, everyone. I hope the weather catches up with the fact that it's spring soon. Soon to be summer. And I hope everybody has a little more vitamin D next time we see each other.
All right.
Night, y'all.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you. Good night.